And again, welcome everyone. Again, I really appreciate everyone taking time out of their day today to join our community practice meeting. I recognize that it's summer and many of us have a variety of activities. There's lots of field work going on, of course, but also people trying to stay connected with their vacations and personal lives. Summer is always a busy time of year, so I really appreciate everyone being here. And today for the meeting, we're going to continue our discussions on the International Conference on Arctic Research Planning. Hopefully many of you are already aware of what ICARP is, but I will give a very quick introduction. These slides I have shown before, so hopefully for those who have seen them before, it's not too repetitive. If it is, feel free to tune out for a couple minutes. And then we'll have a presenter who is Xiangdong Zhang from North Carolina State University, give an overview on RPT-1, the Research Priority Team 1 from the ICARP process, which he is co-leading. So that is our meeting for today. And to start off with, let me share my slides quickly for the ICARP overview. All right. Hopefully everyone can see that slide. If not, please yell at me, but I will move forward here. So for those who are not familiar with what ICARP is the International Conference on Arctic Research Planning. It's a decadal process where the international Arctic science community gets together to set priorities and direction for the next 10 years of Arctic research. And the next ICARP, which will be the fourth ICARP, will take place next spring here in Boulder, Colorado, at the University of Colorado. And ICARP is a joint effort. The logos that you see here are certainly not the limits of the input to the ICARP process, but it's kind of the core group of organizers here locally and those who are supporting the meeting. With that in mind, there are many other groups that are contributing to ICARP. Not shown here, of course, are all the individual universities and laboratories and other entities that are part of this process. Every Arctic scientist can be a part of this process through their input. But these are the different organizations that are directly contributing to ICARP. In terms of goals and scientific focus areas, the primary goals are to discuss the state of Arctic science and kind of understand the place that the Arctic occupies in global affairs, and specifically consider where the most critical knowledge gaps are in Arctic research for the next 10 years. And that part's important, right? We have to be forward thinking. We can't be thinking about the things that we're doing now, even though those might feed into the process. We really have to think about what becomes critical for the Arctic in the next decade. And then secondly, to think about avenues to address those pressing research needs, whether it's field projects, whether it's coordination, synthesis, et cetera. And so that those goals are what drive the directions of the ICARP discussions. And so this is meant to include everyone. It's certainly scientists and people from a variety of backgrounds, early career scientists, local residents, anyone who has an interest in the Arctic should be part of the ICARP process to the extent that they would like to be and are comfortable being. And the kind of complementary approaches and knowledge sources should all weave into the framework that ends up coming out of the ICARP meeting next spring. Just a little background on previous ICARPs. There have been 3 previously. The first one was held in New Hampshire in 1995, the second one in Denmark in 2005, and the third in Japan in 2015. If you're interested in seeing how each of these meetings, the outcomes from each of these meetings, Google does wonders in this case. It's very easy to find some of these reports. I believe that they're also connected through the ICARP website, although I'd have to verify that that's the case. But you'll see that they all look a little bit different as kind of the way we do research and the priorities that we set forth have evolved over the last 30 years. So a little bit about how to engage with ICARP. We'll hear more about this in the upcoming presentation, but generally there is a process here. There are different ways in which individual scientists can contribute to ICARP. Again, it's meant to engage people across a variety of different backgrounds from around the world. And there is kind of a community input stage, which is happening right now, 23 and 24, which includes, again, answering these primary questions. There are specific events that have ICARP endorsement. There are the research priority teams, which we'll talk about in a second. People who are hosting Arctic-related events can evaluate whether it might be a good candidate to be an ICARP relevant activity, and if so, they can specifically seek endorsement from the ICARP team and from IASC to be recognized as an endorsed ICARP event. There have been surveys and other processes for collecting information and outcomes. And all of this has been collected by the IAS Secretariat, who then help to inform the research priority teams and the International ICARP Steering Committee to synthesize and set direction for the actual ICARP meeting next spring. So there are several phases to this process. We're well past phase one, which is preparing. We're certainly in phase two and phase three right now, which is seeking input and defining research priorities. And then as we move into the conference next year, the primary objective there is to pull together all these research priorities and start to develop implementation plans for how the work will actually be done in the major parts of this framework. And then from 2025 and beyond to 2026, the implementation process starts, where the priorities that have been identified and the implementation mechanisms for this are implemented and hopefully adopted by different national funding bodies and scientific organizing bodies. So I mentioned the research priority teams. There are 7 of them. They are all listed here. They are quite different from one another, although there's certainly an overlap at times between them. I will say that from an atmosphere community practice perspective, some of these are, I think, more connected to the bulk of our team than others. But not to say that anyone in this group can't contribute to any of the areas that they feel are best aligned with the work that they do. Today, we're specifically going to learn about topic area 1, the role of the Arctic in the global system, and where things stand with respect to progress on that research priority team. But we are going to try to host meetings in connection with the other topical areas as well. So to summarize, I encourage everybody to consider how your upcoming events, whether it's meetings, workshops, reports, or other things, might help to inform and contribute to the ICARP process. And if you feel like it's appropriate, perhaps reach out to IAS to seek endorsement and make your contribution official, so that we can help facilitate tracking of outcomes from that activity. Also, there are opportunities to submit ICARP-IV relevant resources through the website and connect with the research priority teams. And I'm hoping that our speaker today will provide some examples of how that might happen. And finally, I encourage everybody to consider attending the meeting in Boulder next spring. Hopefully, many of you will have the opportunity to be here, or at least attend parts of it virtually. So that's a very quick overview of ICARP. Just clearly, this is an international activity, and this group specifically is focused on the US, but I want to make sure that the US population and US community is playing a major role in the ICARP process, because ultimately, your research over the next decade will be guided in some ways by the outcomes of this process and by what funding agencies are excited about. So it's important that people's voices are heard and that they provide information into this process. So with that, I think I will introduce our speaker for today. Xiangdong Zhang is a senior scientist at or actually professor at the Department of Marine, Earth, and Atmospheric Sciences at North Carolina State University. He's had previous affiliations with the University of Alaska Fairbanks and SUNY Albany. And Xiangdong, please correct me if I'm misrepresenting any of this. This is through web research. I've certainly known about you for a long time, but tracking people's progress through their careers sometimes doesn't go very well. He has a strong background in Arctic climate processes and is currently leading the ICARP-IV Research Priority Team 1, which I just introduced. And that team specifically focuses on the role of the Arctic in the global system. And so I think with that, I will hand it over to you. And please feel free to give any additional introduction if I missed something important. And otherwise, we look forward to hearing your update on where things stand with RPT-1. And you are still muted, just for information.
Yeah, thank you, Hess, for organizing this webinar, and thank you all for coming over. So I know this busy time during summer, so yeah. So I'm going to share the screen. I believe this is the right one. Yeah. Okay. Has already provided the overview and give a big picture about the ICARP-IV, the timeline and the goals and objective and approaches. So today I only give a very brief introduction about the RPT1. Including what we are working on, what's our objective, and then I am going to give a couple of examples of how we can get the community engaged. The research priority team was organized later last year. For our group, for our team, initially we have 27 team members from 12 countries. Recently, we add other 7 new members to fill out the knowledge gap. So the team members covers the area from, for example, from atmospheric dynamics and chemistry to the ocean science and CIS terrestrial processes, Greenland ice sheet, and also social impacts. All the members, okay, we also include members from senior level to early career, including postdocs. So this is a list of our team members. So 7 new members have not been listed here. We organized a kickoff meeting during ASSW 2024 in March in Edinburgh, UK. So 8 members gave overall talks during this workshop to provide the flavor to the group and to the ASSW participants to show what we are working on, and also stimulate discussions not only among our group, and also discussions for the all attendants to the ASSW 2024. So after that, so we discussed about objectives of our team. So overarching objective is to address research priorities and their implementation regarding the role of Arctic in the global system. So I list a number of examples here. For example, we are going to evaluate the needs for further scientific understanding of the role of Arctic in the global system. So we consider the time frame from the past to present and the future into the future. So we also look at the teleconnections, when specifically look at the different fields, different research area. So we also look at the different physical processes, such as the teleconnection patterns originated from both Arctic and the lower latitude, to have a linkage between the Arctic and the lower latitudes. We also look at the rapid changes of Arctic on stream events, both locally and remotely. For example, in the lower latitude, mid latitude, and the low latitudes. The other research area is like a temporal and a spatial distribution of precipitation, permafrost thawing, and other for example, the changes of stream events in other parameters. So we also include chemistry processes. We emphasize short-lived climate forces. The other example is the social impacts. We have elements of the social impacts. For example, the global consequence, economic impacts. Yeah. So this shows our objective and related examples of what we are working on. According to the planning and the guidance from a steering committee. So we have a number of tasks during this working time periods from last year to the next year. So the first task is reviewing and analyze the community input. That means the community engagement is really important. Okay. The second one is define knowledge gaps and the research priority for topic area. So we have 7 priority teams, right? Each priority teams has their working area. Of course, we have interactions across different teams. Okay. The next one is providing recommendations to, for example, on how to address the gaps and the priorities to the community. The fourth one is consulting on preliminary results of each RPT during the ICARP summit. That will be in Boulder next year, next spring. Yeah. Finally, we are going to provide the evaluation results about the researcher priority and the knowledge gap. So we have a deadline for this work. So the final deadline is October 2025. So we are going to finalize our results, submit a recommendation to ICARP-IV International Steering Committee at that time. Yeah. So because, okay, during the workshop, we discussed what approach we are going to employ to make a progress. So what's a plan? We also discuss about a plan, how to make how to move forward. So we defined and organized 5 research themes. The first one is about improvement of observation and the improvement of Earth system model, including global model and region model, focus on the Arctic, and the and the integration of observation and the model improvements. The second research theme focuses on Earth system linkage. That means there is a linkage across the different Earth system components, like atmosphere, ocean, CS, Greenland ice sheet, terrestrial processes. Yeah, and also look at the feedbacks across these components. We also include this research team also include interactions between Arctic and the low latitude and the global climate system. The third research theme is the attribution of Arctic changes to evaluate what's attribution mechanisms driving the changes of Arctic climate system. The fourth one is about Arctic terrestrial systems and hydrology. So we have, like what I mentioned earlier, we have social components in our research, in our priority team. So in this team, they focus on social economic implications and the consequence and the global collaboration. In the next several slides, I'm going to show some examples we have discussed during our workshop and after workshop. Those slides may give you a flavor about what we are thinking. So what we are working on initially at this stage. Yeah. For example, this slide shows the observational consideration. For example, this contributed by Michael. So when we look at the left panel, WMO already designed global observational system. This is an example for radio sound observation. This measures vertical profile from surface to the stratosphere. So the first panel at the top shows a reference observational system that provide most accurate observations as a reference for the large scale observational system. So the middle panel shows the baseline observational system. The low panel shows integrated global radio sound RCAP. So when we look at those panels, we can see there's a big gap in the Central Arctic, right? So basically, there is a lack of observations of vertical structures of atmosphere over the Arctic. This is a really big challenge. They cause a lot of bias when we look at when we study the atmosphere structures in the Arctic. Also, this causes difficulty to develop a more accurate reanalysis data products. Also, that's limited the development of the model, the physical treatment over the Arctic. So to solve this problem, though, there was discussions about some ideas. For example, we may borrow the ideas from this global observational system to design the Arctic, sustainable Arctic observational system. Right? For example, we can develop detailed, accurate observations as a reference observation of the Arctic based on the icebreakers. You know, each country has icebreakers going to the Arctic to do measurements each year, right? So if there is the concert action across the different countries, across the community, we may organize, this is the idea. So organize systematic observations to provide a reference over the Arctic. Yeah. And then the second level, like the baseline observation, so maybe based on the land observational network to have a development system, to have an observational system. Yeah. And finally, because Arctic has its very specific feature, different from main latitudes and global, right? So there are still gaps based on the icebreaker observations and the land-based observation and the satellite observation. There are still gaps over the Arctic. So the reanalysis data and data simulation may help to fill out the gaps over there. So we can, at the third level, we can depend on the improvement of a data simulation approach and develop the very more accurate, reliable reanalysis data covering the Arctic. Yeah. So this is about our observation system. Yeah. So when looking at the models I mentioned, the Earth system model has a big bias over the Arctic. The hotspot is there are many the final scale physical processes that has not been resolved over Arctic. You know, currently, like for example, the CMIP-6 type global models, they usually have a spatial resolution like 100 kilometers. Some regional models may can reach 10-kilometer resolution, but when you look at many physical processes, it can be at a 1-kilometer spatial resolution. For example, like I show example like snow processes, right? Recently, there has been discussions about more complicated the snow processes like blowing snow and the snow drifting. Those physical processes have not been implemented or represented in the state of art or the system models. So to improve the representation of those finer scale physical processes, or to improve those unresolved physical processes, we need to have high resolution simulations, right? High resolution model development. In that case, the high resolution observations is also very important. So in this case, the integration between model view improvement and development and the improved observational network will be very important for the future, for the next decade. That's what we have discussed and we are thinking. Yeah. The other slides shows the bigger topic has been, there have been extensive studies during recent 10 years. It's about how Arctic change influence may latitude stream events, stream climate and weather events. For example, from our observations from our experience during recent decades, there's an increased frequency of streaming events in both winter and summer. So there was a hypothesis the Arctic warming may influence that. There's a number of physical mechanisms suggested, like the weakening of a stratosphere polar vortex during winter, and there's a changes of weakening of storm tracks. There's amplified jet stream waves, right? There's a different physical mechanism proposed and tested, but there's still no strong agreement on those physical mechanisms, especially from modern studies. So this topic could be continually a cutting edge topic for the next years, for the following years. Yeah. So we talk about how Arctic influence mid latitude and lower latitudes. So there's the other way around. So lower latitudes and the global climate system can also influence Arctic. So here I just shot two examples. For example, for hemisphere part. So for hemisphere component, so we found that there is more meridionally aligned circulation pattern or amplified jet streams. So that's caused more frequently enhanced the moisture transport and heat transport going to the Arctic. So that also changes pattern of surface wind stress. So when surface wind stress changes more meridionally, that can add additional wind-driven circulation in the ocean. For example, there's the warm water transport from Atlantic Ocean into the Arctic, so to provide additional heat to the Arctic Ocean. So if those increased heat release from, for example, from Atlantic water layer to the bottom of sea ice and release to the atmosphere, of course, it causes accelerated sea ice decrease and maybe alter changes the atmosphere circulation of our Arctic. So the bottom panel, the figures shows some changes of Atlantic water layer and the changes of the maximum heat release from ocean to the atmosphere to the bottom sea ice as a function of the year. We can see the from current time into the future time. So there's more warm water flowing into the Arctic, but currently there's still the big challenge is to understand what's the physical mechanism or processes to cause changes of atmosphere dynamics, changes of atmosphere circulation. So, and also there is a really challenging questions, how currently changing the Arctic, the temperature and the Arctic, the flowing pattern changes, stratification and the ocean mixing. That's a critical for heat release from a warm water layer to the surface, right? So this is about two-way. This slide shows examples of how low latitude influence Arctic Ocean. So chemical process is also important for the Arctic climate changes. So when looking at the simulation of chemistry processes, there is a big bias, discrepancies across the different models, right? Including both vertical structure and the physical processes, transport. Okay, when we discuss chemical processes, we discuss a lot about interactions between chemical process and a dynamic process. So that could be the weakest part in current observational study and modern studies. So we thought about how to promote interactions between physical scientists and the chemical scientists, dynamic scientists and the chemical scientists to work together to improve the interactions between chemical process and the dynamical processes. Yeah. So there were also many discussions among our team how to look at feedback processes between chemical process and the physical process. Like, for example, there's a CIS retreat, there's changes of ocean mixing and the changes of atmosphere structure, how the chemical processes interact with those changed atmosphere and the ocean status. Yeah. So when looking at the social impacts, the team, the research team had many discussions how to make a progress on this. So far we haven't had many experts in working on this research theme. Currently, we try to get a few more experts to join us working on this area. But currently, the Celine and Eric, they have discussed about the approach, how to make a progress. For example, they list what possible social economic implications and consequences, like there is challenges, there's opportunities. And then based on that, they can do, they discuss about the approach to move forward. So they discuss about case studies at the selected countries and the selected community. And then they provide entire recommendations to the steering committee. So those slides just show some examples about what we are thinking, what we have discussed. So what we are going to discuss. They don't cover the entire system. So this is a very limited example. So obviously, we are working on very complicated scientific questions. We covering the entire Earth system. So the community, the engagement, so the entire community effort is critical for this planning process. So in the next slides, I would like to show you some examples how to get the community engaged. Has mentioned the workshops. Here I gave 3 examples about the past workshops. Okay. For example, the US Clover organized a workshop several years ago focused on the topic, look at how Arctic climate change influence Mid-Atlantic stream weather and stream events. Aspen Climate Institute also organized the similar workshop, but mainly focused on physical mechanism. So the outcome from these 2 workshops, they publish perspective and review papers. So those efforts promoted the studies on the topic very much substantially. So we can see there is a largely dramatic increase of publications on this topic during the recent 5 years. They also identify knowledge gaps and the research priorities. This is really big contribution to the planning of ICARP-IV. So the other example is about how global climate change and the low latitude process influence Arctic stream events. The workshop was organized 2 years ago. So the bigger group is still working on this. So there's a planned review paper based on this workshop. Okay. The other project, the other examples would be, for example, the International Arctic Science Report. IASC publish a report each year. They are calling, according to what I remember, they are calling input for 2024 science report currently. So everyone from the community can make a contribution to those reports. Yeah, some countries also publish their research plan, research reports like Japan. They recently published their research report. The US also have already published their research plan. According to what I remember, US agencies also call input from the community to develop this research plan. So this is the good way to make a contribution for the planning, researcher priority planning for the next decade. So actually, has introduced this nice figure showing on the right-hand side to me. The US research plan already show the research priorities. This really provide very good and really useful input for our work. So finally, I would like to introduce the other way to get engaged. The ICARP-IV already established a web page for each research priority teams. If you have any resources and suggestions, you can submit them through this web page, or you can contact any team member. So to express your opinion and to give your suggestion, to provide your research articles, to provide your research or project reports. All of those are very useful and very important for us. Yeah, we are not working alone, so we are collaborating with everyone in the community. We were like, so we are very happy to get your input, comments, and suggestions. Yeah. So as I finish here, so take questions.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Xiangdong. Thank you for the presentation and for all the nice examples that you gave of the type of science that's being considered for the RPT-1 part of the ICARP. Do we have questions? It looks like Jack has a question. Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, that's a very, very nice presentation and quite thorough. Could you put back up the list that had all of the RPTs, not just one? You said there's 7 or 8 of them, right? It was like your third or fourth slide way at the beginning.
Yeah, I did not has slide increase that. Right?
Yeah, I have a slide.
I can stop sharing here.
I can share it. 1 second.
Yeah.
Well, my question, and this is partly reflects how old I am now, but when I was listening to you talk, it seemed to me, and you kind of came around to it right at the very end, I don't see how this process really maps very smoothly onto the existing U.S. Arctic Research Plan, which, you showed sort of the main high-level parts of the U.S. Arctic Research Plan. And all of RPT-1 would fit into one pretty small basket of the research plan, right? And a lot more of it is, like topic area 5 is really driving the U.S. plan. But what you're talking about is like an old school, we're going to do science planning. What we want to do is get every scientist is going to fight like hell to get 1 or 2 words about their favorite topic into the plan so that they can point to it when they want to do whatever they want to do, right? And so certainly what you were showing is a very, I would say, with all this schooling in NNA and co-production or whatever, is a very colonial view of science in the Arctic. And it's very physical and very elegant and really important questions that get us all jazzed up, but I don't see the buy-in from the people that are most impacted. And I was just wondering, how does that, as a part of the U.S. community, should we be paying attention to this ICARP prospect, or really engaging in the implementation plans for the U.S. plan that's already in existence and, rolling out? And that's a question for the whole group, not just for you, right?
Yeah.
Xiangdong, not picking on you at all, just asking the group, because I'm not sure I see the connection between the 2 different efforts very clearly.
Are you going to answer the question, or?
I'm happy to give some thoughts on my side.
Okay.
But please feel free. This can be a discussion. It certainly shouldn't be just one person answering this question, and particularly not me if that person is going to be answering the question. I would say Jack, we should definitely be focused on the US plan. We are US scientists, but I think maybe the cause and effect are a little bit reversed here, and that, you know, when the US plan is updated, or when the US implementation plan is updated, there should likely be some responsiveness to what comes out of this ICARP process, right? The ICARP is looking ahead for the next decade. In some ways, the current US plan comes from work since the last ICARP. And I think that ultimately, as time progresses here, the next version of the US plan or the revised implementation of that US plan should be slightly responsive in some way to ICARP. That's why the US participates in this process. So I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I don't think that we should focus on one or the other, but I do think that ultimately the ICARP process helps to guide for the next decade, you know, where national plans may be looking. But I agree with you that that they're not very well aligned right now.
Right. Well, I guess I maybe Meredith would have some thoughts on this, but I thought that IARPIC and the U.S. Science Plan is responding to the Arctic, the U.S. Arctic Research Council and guidance from, our government. And I don't know, when I read the rollout of the current plan, did it really reference ICARP much at all? I mean, maybe it did at some kind of way background, but I think that the current U.S. Arctic Research Plan doesn't seem to really care what ICARP did 10 years ago. But maybe I'm overreacting, but.
Yeah, I can't respond fully to that part of it because I was kind of a step removed from the drafting process, and there were many documents that my colleague Serena pulled for the drafters to have them review and try to align with. And I can check to see if that the previous ICARP was one of them. Just looking at these topic areas, though, I can see many of the different collaboration teams reflected in the topic areas. So we have a technology, just kind of starting from the bottom, we have a technology collaboration team. We have a team that's focused on infrastructure. We have one that's focused on STEM. Obviously, co-production and Indigenous-led methodologies is aligned with one of our teams. The science cooperation and diplomacy, maybe not so much. We also have a sustainable economies and livelihoods, and then do have monitoring, observing, modeling, and prediction, as well as the Arctic system interaction. So I see a lot of overlap here, but I don't know all of the details of what's in these topic areas. And I guess also to your point, Jack, that maybe the process for deciding what is important differs between these two groups.
Right, and it could be some of the other RPTs are more aligned. Just the presentation that we just heard was very, very focused on the physics and a little bit on the chemistry, which is in much more detail than that the 4 pillars of our plan, right, is not really hardcore science, is not in that plan in the way that it was in today's presentation. But I should stop. Go ahead. I mean, it's still an important opportunity for people to influence the future and also learn what other people are thinking is important.
I would like to share some information with you guys. During IASSW 2024 back to March in UK, there were some communications and discussion across the different priority teams. Generally, okay, currently the social impacts and climate surveys become very important because it is really linked to the community. But according to what we have discussed, there are still larger uncertainties about the physical part. So in those topic areas or research priority teams, the team one is doing okay. They are doing very fundamental work. So that's provide foundations to other groups, to other teams. Yeah, this is the basis. You know, for example, I went to other teams kickoff workshop. So there were questions asked during those workshops. When talking about, for example, we're talking about the changes of physical or chemical or systems, sea ice, ground and ice sheet. So those teams mainly answer, they count on the team one. Yeah. So we collaborate together. So, but we focus on the different area. The team one is just like a foundation, considering climate change, climate system change for other teams. Yeah, that's general. That's opinion across the different from the discussion across the different research team.
Thank you, Xiangdong. I'm going to stop sharing because I find myself looking at I've got two displays
okay.
up and I'm looking away from the camera. So I'll do this. It looks like Stacy has a question. Stacy, go ahead, please.
I put a bit of a question in chat, but also on the relationship between the teams, you know, for that sort of broader discussion. Jack, I do hear you, but I think what Xiangdong was sharing about the interaction between the teams, they are meant to build upon each other. So I'm a co-chair of RPT-V, but then I'm in the membership of 3. So that one very much is expecting to have information and priorities that come out of the workshops where people who are in like the hard sciences, who aren't going to show up to necessarily like a geographer or a social science workshop, but would be in spaces to talk about permafrost melt or ocean currents or some of those hard science topics. And so I sort of understand why they're split in that way, even though like impacts and ultimate priorities, they're deeply intertwined. But I don't think you'll get the participation, same as social scientists aren't going to go to a chemistry meeting, right? I did want to ask about the case studies. Is that something that you guys are looking at in terms of a product for the final report, or a tool to get better feedback, more refined feedback in the process leading up to ASSW?
Yeah, that's a current discussion and the idea to have case studies. So currently for social component, we only have 2 members. There will be new member join us from Norway. She's a more senior scientist. So currently we try to get a couple of more members to work on this area. And we also have a plan to have discussions, cross team discussions, for example, with your team and other teams about this specific topic, about how to link physical chemical parts to the social impacts. Yeah. So.
And I saw your hand come up and go down and come up and go down. Do you have a question you'd like to ask?
Well, I just wanted to clarify, Jack's off now, but I just wanted to clarify when he was talking about the current research plan, are we talking about the IARP-IV one?
He was talking about the current U.S. Arctic Research Plan. Yeah. So
the IARP-IV, I mean, the ICARPs are what? They're what? Envisioning 10 years ahead? Is that what right?
Correct.
So previous to this recent IARP-IV research strategy, it was mostly hard science. I mean, this is the very first version where we've actually got more convergence in each priority area than we've ever had before in the research plan. So I just wanted to refresh people's backstory here about how this stuff connects or could connect, because that strategy this time around is very different, very different than it has been in the past. It's mostly been, right, hard science stuff in the collaboration teams. So I am a NAA co-PI, so I'm dealing, and I'm a social scientist, but I also do social ecological studies, and I use community monitors to do a lot of just basic observation, hard science observation data collecting, and my focus is disaster management with emergency managers as the way to apply it, but and has always been. But I'm just saying there are ways to take the hard sciences and apply them. There is no doubt in my mind that that can't happen. You just have to get the right people in the room. And you do have to have a convergence team. You definitely need a convergence team to understand how to do that. Just thought I'd add that.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. I really appreciate it. We are a minute or so over time, and I know many people have another call to jump to. So I think I will wrap up the meeting. But before we do that, I'd like to thank Xiangdong for joining us today and for giving a nice overview of the process. And thank again everybody for joining us and for helping to contribute to the discussion. And we look forward to seeing you at our next meeting, which I believe Barry is actively planning at the moment. And we will share information on that when it becomes available. So thank you all for joining, and we look forward to future meetings together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Bye.
all. Bye.